everyone. I thought perhaps I'd make a video so we could do an art project while we're all staying at home and keeping safe. So I chose this assignment, which is really fun because it's really colorful and relatively easy to do. I think kinders, first graders, second graders up to fifth grade will have no problem doing this. Maybe my kinders and first graders might need a little help, but I think they can do it. So it's fairly common. I see it a lot on the internet. But one of the reasons why I like it is because it's kind of splashy and pretty, fun to do. And also because you can do this without going out and shopping for any kind of supplies. So I wanted to focus on stuff that you could do at home with what you have at home. So it's a great line drawing that has a three-dimensional effect. It's kind of like op art, right? It looks like it's three-dimensional, only it is not. It's two-dimensional design. And they achieve the three-dimensional with these line works and shape and putting on this kind of white center that creates kind of like a highlight as if light is shining on the shape, and it helps create the pop-out effect. So when we're doing it, we're going to concentrate on a few things, one of them being this line that we don't forget to put that in, right? Because once you just start coloring that area in, it'll just flatten out and it won't kind of have the same 3D effect. And we're also going to focus on making sure that our lines that we draw are really curved, because that helps with the 3D effect as well. And in terms of materials, let's talk about what we're going to need. And feel free at any time to stop the video, go get supplies, come back, restart it, fast forward it. I'm going to probably be moving pretty fast, but some of you might need a little extra time. So you can pause the video, do the step that I'm instructing, then turn it back on, listen to the next step, etc., etc. So supplies. So this is on just a regular piece of drawing paper out of my sketchbook. Now, if you have a sketchbook, perfect. Open your sketchbook up and just do it in the sketchbook. If you don't have a sketchbook, no problem. You don't need fancy paper to do this. There's some other alternatives. So I have a piece of computer paper, some printer paper, I should say. If you have a printer at home, you just grab a piece of paper from the printer. There's that. I tend to buy cardstock a lot, which is a little heavier paper. And it's nice because the markers won't bleed through. But not a lot of people have cardstock hanging around. But if you do, that would work. For sure, most of you should just have some ruled paper at home that you do your homework on. That's perfectly fine. Or graph paper if you have graphing paper at home. I cut out the little holes that you can lay it in the binder just to make it nice and clean. And if you use both of these types of paper, even the computer paper, they're a little thinner, the printer paper I should say, they're a little thinner, so I would definitely put something underneath it to absorb any ink from markers that spill through, if you choose markers. So I think I will use my cardstock, because why not? I have my cardstock. You can also use wrapping paper, like the backside of wrapping paper that's white, or Trader Joe's bag inside. It's all brown. The colors will come out a little differently, but that might be kind of interesting. This will be kind of interesting because the line work and the grid pattern might actually enhance the design a little bit. So anything goes on that. So what are you working with? So pencil, obviously, to draw, or if you want a Sharpie, if you have it, I'm going to work with a Sharpie like we do in class lots of times. We draw first, and then if we make mistakes, we can erase, and then we go back over it with Sharpie. You can do that if you want, or if you feel confident and you have a Sharpie, just do the drawing with a Sharpie. Then you have what you're going to color it with. So basically, I would recommend, if you have colored pencils, to pick colored pencils. If you have markers, that works really well and they actually look really pretty with it. Or even if you have none of that, if you don't have crayons, if you have crayons, crayons will totally work. pastels, oil pastels might be better than chalk because chalk can be a little messy. Or ballpoint pen. I have a red ballpoint pen here and a black ballpoint pen. Both of those would work. They might be better for a little bit older student because they're going to take a little longer, and there's going to be a little bit more of a commitment to getting the marks on the paper. But still, I'm going to do a little sample with that, so you'll see what that looks like too. So when I do this, you're going to pick one material to work with, right? One color material to work with. But when I do this, I'm going to recreate this on this paper, and then I'm going to use all three of them just so you can see what they look like on this one paper. But I mean, you could do that if you want to, but you would just choose whichever one you want, whichever material you have at home and that you would like to use, okay? So how to begin. So you have your paper in front of you. You have something underneath it if you need to protect your table or your surface. You have your materials that you're working with. I'm going to start with my Sharpie marker. And you'll notice in the beginning of this design, all the lines start at the end of the paper and they end somewhere in the center of the paper. Now I offset my center because I think that looks more interesting than just having it dead center. And you'll notice that I didn't, well, I guess on this side I did. I tried to kind of even offset my lines so they're not in the center of the edge of a paper. They're kind of a little bit more offset either to one side or the other, except this side. But just a suggestion, not mandatory. So the first thing we're going to do, as we do in class, how we do those guide points that we often do, is we're going to put just a dot where we want all the lines to meet on the paper, right? So I'll offset mine again, and I'm going to put my dot somewhere like here, right? Just so I can see where it is. And then I'm going to start bringing lines from the edge of my paper to the dot, okay? And you'll notice on this that the lines are very curvy. They're not straight. I think that makes it more interesting. If you make them straight, I think that's fine too. So you'll notice that we have on this design 6 different cone shapes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to be making 6 lines from the edge of the paper to the dot. So I'm going to start up at the edge here, a little offset, not in the dead center, but a little more to the right-hand side. And I'm going to draw my line, kind of a wavy line. I'm going to bring it all the way to the center dot, right? And then I also want to make each section not all uniform, like they shouldn't all be the same width, just for interest. They're all just slightly different. So I'm going to take my second line on this side, and I'm going to make this one a little bit wider. I'm going to bring it all the way to the center. So that's 2 lines. I have 4 more to go. And then I will do, I think I'll make this one a little thinner. This is my third. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to make a really wide one over here. Here's my 4th line. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces, and I need 6 spaces. So let's do one more here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's cut one of these in half. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces, just like here, okay? So once I do that, I think what I'm going to do first is you'll notice on mine here that I've made the lines that come from the edge of the paper to the center dot a little thicker, a little darker, a little thicker, right? Just to kind of, because we're going to have a lot of line work on the page when we're done drawing it all out, just to make those a little bit more distinguished, just to separate them a little bit more. So I'm going to go over these guys a little bit and make them a little bit darker, a little bit thicker, I should say. Right? And then we'll start doing the inside ones before we start coloring. All right, so they're a little thicker. I may thicken those up a little later again, but for now that's good. Okay, so here's my basic design, right? Easy cheesy. Now I've got to go in and create all these single lines. In each space, I've got to create these big curved lines, all right? So again, really important to make sure that the lines have a bit of an arc. They're not necessarily a half circle, but they are kind of this looks like more than a half circle, right? They are rather exaggerated. So make sure when you're doing that you're not just making a straight line across, okay? Because that's going to help with the 3D effect to make it look like it's popping out. You could have some dimension. So how many did I put on here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, around 6. Let's see what I can do. Just space them out evenly. Now when you get to the edge of the paper, you might not have enough room to make the one, so you're just going to have to pretend. It's kind of like jump the page, right? You're going to start up here, stop, and then maybe bring it down a little bit over here, right? So how many spaces do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You'll notice that all the lines on these guys, they meet up for each section, right? So this line here meets up with this line here. So we're going to create the same amount of spaces in each of these sections, okay? Because when we put the color on, we have to alternate the color, and we want to make sure that when we alternate that those different sections are kind of meeting up. And I'll show you. That may not make sense now, but it will in a second. So just where this one began, you begin the next one, right? Where this one begins, you begin the next one. Where this one begins, you begin the next one. And then you're going to have to adjust because this is a bigger section. And then again up here, and then it jumps to here. And then maybe I have to pretend I have one more section up here, okay? So you'll notice it looks like kind of arches, each section. They're meeting up, all right? So let's do it to the other sections. Let's hold on that. Do it to this section. And I think I'll put one right here. And this section. One of the ways you'll know that you're putting equal a number of sections on each one is to always begin where the last section ended, right? Okay, last one. And now we're going to be meeting, right? I started here and then I meet up with this one. Meet. See if I can go like this. Okay, so all of my sections are in. And you can see how making these lines a little darker is really helping define each area that we have to color. So since I am going to be showing you what each of these different materials look like on one piece of paper, again, you would be choosing one to do the whole thing with, probably. But I just want to show you what each different type of material looks like on here. So I will start with the colored pencils. And I chose two colors because I like to alternate colors, kind of like I did here. I did pink, brown, pink, brown, pink, brown. So I chose orange and kind of a raspberry color. And I'm going to start on this one. I'll start with the orange first and then raspberry, orange, raspberry, orange, raspberry. And one of the easy ways to do it is just to start with one color and then skip each section while you're doing it. So I'm going to start coloring in my orange. And notice I'm going to leave a little white, a channel of white going through the center. That's the glare or the kind of white hot spot that's going to run through the center of each shape, right? And I'm going to leave that. And then as I get down toward the bottom of the shapes that I've created, I'm going to go a little darker with my pencil to kind of look like the shape rounds more, right? And I can leave it a little, and I'll show you that looks a little better as you get into the larger areas. Okay, so I've done one. Now I'm going to skip this one because this one is going to be this color. And I'm going to go to the next one and I'll do the orange on that one too. And remember that my white channel is going to be going up through the center. So I might want to just kind of quickly, just kind of knock in where that channel is going to be. And then I'm going to quickly put the color in. And colored pencils are really nice. The ones I have are rather thick, so they go on really fast, cover a lot of ground really quickly, right? Notice how my white, I'm going to call it my hot spot down the middle of the shape, is kind of jagged. It doesn't have to be really like sharp and crisp. It can kind of be jagged. That kind of is interesting looking too. I think if you made it really crisp and sharp, the line really sharp, I think that would look okay too, your choice. But notice how I'm knocking it in a little darker as it goes down, and that makes it kind of look like it's rounding a little more. Okay, so I've done this. Now I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to do this one. And I remember that I have to put my white channel in, so I'm just going to kind of define the area first. And then I start coloring it in. Really fast. Pressing a little harder down there in the bottom part of it. Okay, and then I switch my color to my raspberry, and I start down the bottom again. So for a little extra challenge, you can kind of try to develop on the sides here a really dark part of it, and then kind of a medium tone, and then a lighter tone. So it goes from darkest to medium to light, kind of like a little bit of a value shift there, like we talk about the lightness and darkness of a color. Darkness most tucked into this central line, and then a medium color, and then a lighter color. Right, so that's one, quick, with the colored pencils. Now I'm going to switch to my markers, and I'll go to this next one next door to it. And we'll start again. I like to start with the light color. Remember to keep that central. Channel of color. Skip one, go to the next one. It's easier if you kind of put your finger down the middle and give yourself some guidelines there. And then again, I just go over it a couple times down in the corners here to kind of make it look a little darker. Just a little better here. Skip one, go to the next one. Skip one, go to the last one. A little easier. No white area you have to put in this section. And then switch out the next color. The markers cover the area so fast. It makes it go a lot quicker. When you get to the ballpoint pen, you'll see it goes a lot slower. All right, done. And that's the marker look. Okay, the last is the ballpoint pens. So I have red and black, and I'll start with the red, I think. And I'm going to start at the base, just like I did with the other two colors. And you'll notice the ballpoint pen have a really different quality to them. They're kind of scratchy. You know, it takes a lot more effort to get the color really saturated on the page, but you can do it. It just takes more time. That's one of the reasons why I said this might be better for older students, because it just takes more time. And then I skip. This is going to be black, and this is going to be red. And remember, I'm keeping that white highlight, hot spot, through the middle. So if it helps, you can put your finger down and kind of do some quick markers there to find out where you want to stop that. If it helps, you don't have to do that. Notice how my pen is always going in the same direction. I'm not switching directions with it. I'm always keeping it kind of in the same direction, one direction. And that just helps kind of the continuity of it, make it look a little not so scratchy and kind of disjointed. Gives it a little smoothness to it. And again, if I want to create kind of like a differing value, I have to work a little harder in this corner to put on some more ink and then feather it out so it's not quite so dark, and then it's the lightest up top. Oh, I made a mistake. Look at that. That was supposed to be black. Oh well, I think I'll go over it with black and not worry about it. I'm going to do my red here too. Mistakes happen. No worries. We figure it out. Even adults make mistakes, guys. Maybe it'll kind of actually make it look cool to have the black and the red combined. Let's see. And for my kindergartners and first grade students, just coloring the space in might be enough. If you can leave the white space through the center, that's like extra gold star. If you can't, just try alternating your colors in each space, right? We make it work for whatever level we're at, and we don't worry. Okay, so now I have to skip. That's black, this is red. I gotta remember that so I don't make another mistake. Although, once I put the black on that section that I made the mistake on, I might really like it with the two color combo. So I might have to go back into the other sections that are just all black and kind of add a little red to maybe make it look the same, right? When we make mistakes like that, we kind of have to figure out how to correct them in a way that makes it look like we meant to do it that way. Okay, do this one here. And the ballpoint pen, you can see how much longer it takes to work each section. And it gets a little tricky at the edges. That's why you want this protective, second layer, something underneath. So if you run off the page, like I'm doing a lot with the ballpoint pen, you're protecting whatever surface that you're working on. So if you're working on your dining room table or somewhere you wouldn't want to get pen mark or marker mark, it's a good reason why to have that extra protective layer underneath the drawing. A little more red over here. I want it a little bit darker. Okay, so then that'll be black. Red off, black on. Now, red, black. I'm going to have to fix this section that I did wrong the first time. And let's see what happens. I think what I'm going to have to do is on the other sections, I'm going to have to add a little red to the black sections just to make it look like, hey, that's the way I meant to do it. And it actually looks cool with the two colors. So I think that's what I'm going to do. When I get done with the black, I'll go back in with a little red on the black sections and just kind of make the two work together. kind of means that I don't have to put quite as much black on if I'm going to go over it with red, because the red will fill in some of the area. And my mistake makes me think also that no matter what material you use, whether you use markers or colored pencils or ballpoint pens, layering colors on top of each other might be an interesting effect as well. Because two markers on top of each other are going to change the color, and you can create new colors by just layering different colors on top of each other. So, and that just gives it a little extra depth and beautifulness. Okay, I'm definitely going to need to leave a white channel up here, so I got to make sure I don't accidentally cover that up too much. Now let me go back in with the red a little bit. So cool. I like the way that looks. Sometimes it's a perfect example of sometimes your mistakes are the things that you find, you discover something new with, and it turns out to add to the piece, not take away from it. So it's a good example of why we shouldn't be afraid to make mistakes in art, because we find things in those mistakes that add to it. Okay, so there's my 3 different materials, right? Ballpoint pen, colored pencils, and markers. Now I have a sample that I finished doing the same thing, right? And when you'll notice what I did is the mirror opposite of this section here is right over here. And in my finished piece, I did the same thing. I just mirrored them, right? And for the markers, I went to the opposite side and I did markers on that side. And for my ballpoint pen, I did opposite side, ballpoint pen. So this is what it looks like when it's all finished. Except on this one, you can see how when I don't add the red to the black, what the difference is. Kind of looks like a Dr. Seuss motif a little bit, a little color combo. But I am really liking adding the red with the black. Kind of looks cool. So finish yours up. I won't finish this one because I have this one for you to look at. So if you do it, take a picture and send it to me through Fresh Schools. Have your parents send it to me through Fresh Schools. And because I really want to see it. I'd love to see the work you do. And if you like having an art lesson like this, let me know and I can maybe put more through Fresh Schools for you. All right? Have a great time doing your art project and stay creative during this time. Bye, guys.